Hello everyone, and welcome in this new recording where we'll be talking about the redesign of the home control application to make it more usable on a mobile phone. Actually, to be honest, it's the second time I make this recording because the first time, I don't know why, but I didn't notice that I was not using the correct microphone, so there was no sound recorded at all. Yippee! So this time, no, I'm not making the same mistake. I have the sound. Anyway, let's get into it and let's try to make this a bit more like some kind of tutorial on Qt. I'll try to see if I can provide more details in this direction then. So we actually started with the result that we got from the previous recording and previous blog article, I would say. It's not really an article here. This one on the broadly compression. So at the end of that, we got a working WebAssembly version of my home control application. So this is something I can run on my phone. I don't even have my phone here. Where is it? Okay, it's over there. Never mind. But when you run that on the phone, you would get something displaying like that, because I was at first only working on a desktop version of this application, so I use a pretty regular display for a desktop application. And on a mobile phone, it's not really that convenient to have this menu bar, those tabs, and those, well, gray color, gray text, and gray standard buttons everywhere. So I really wanted to refactor that to make it more, well, enjoyable to use the application, I guess. So to do that, what did I do? I started with some kind of simple design like this one in mind. And what we have here is basically, I have a button here because at first I was using an action here in the file menu. This action was to set your user credentials, so to use the application to be able to perform some kind of action, you need to provide some user credentials, and this is done with a dialog, which was shown with set credentials menu item here in the file menu. Let me just show you now what this is in the source. Let's see, it's an app, HomeView. So yes, I have the old version here in source v0, and the new version is in a completely new folder, so source folder here. And where are those buttons? I have the main window, and the main window actually just contains the main panel. And it's in the main panel that we define first this row where we have the kind of gear button to display the dialog, and then big buttons for each of the available servers. So I currently have two servers, so home control and stream control. So this button is defined in main panel. So if we go in main panel, you will see that we start with a vertical box layout. So it means I'm going to position everything. I'm going to stack everything vertically in this main widget, the main panel. And then the first thing I add in this vertical stack is an horizontal layout, so a single row if you want. And on that row, I'm going to first add a button, a push button. Now this is a convenient trick in case you're not very familiar with Qt. What we have here is in fact a push button, and you could use a push button either with some kind of text display, or text plus an icon, or just an icon. In fact, if you just set the text to an empty string. So this is the behavior we're using here. So I'm creating, this is what I call a bitmap button, which is a push button in Qt. I'm creating a push button with a label which is empty, and I'm providing the gear here as the icon. So it's creating some kind of icon button if you want. And this is the first element that I had in this row. And starting from there, I read from the configuration file, which is a YAML file. So let's see this one, config. So this is going to be loaded in the application, and in this file I can read the list of servers that I have available. So you see that I have 2 of them, and for each of them I'm going to add a new button, and I lost the previous file. So main panel. So you see I'm reading the server's key, and for each element that I have here, it's an array of objects. It's not even an array, it's a dictionary of dictionary if you want, or an object of objects, you could say. I don't know. In my case, in fact, in C++, I call that any maps. Yes. So because you can store just anything in some kind of map, so an any map. And so in this part I'm just creating an additional button and adding that to this first row again. And we also at the same time create under the first row a server panel, which is another widget that is integrated into this main panel. So you have the first row, then the first server panel for your first server, then another server panel for the second one, and so on. And the idea is all of those server panels, I'm going to hide them and keep only one of them visible, which is the one currently selected with this first row of buttons. So when I change the selection of the server on this first row, it's going to unhide a single server panel and hide everything else. So that's why we keep track of this list of server panels, mapping them to the server name. And yeah, when we press the button corresponding to a given server, it's going to trigger this activate server panel function. And this one, you get the name of the server you want to activate. So you just iterate through all your server panels, and if you found that server panel, you keep track of that panel first. And actually first we start with hiding everything, and if we have a target panel, we show this one. A bit strange to do it this way, but in fact you really want to do it this way, because if you don't do that and you have, for instance, 2 panels in your list, and you just go through the list and you say, okay, this is the one I want to see, so I want to activate it, and then I find another one which was activated before, but now I want to deactivate it, there will be a time where you actually have the 2 panels activated together before you get to deactivate the second one. And this is enough to actually get the Qt framework to trigger some kind of resize event of your window, and to ensure that you can display both panels together. And then when you hide the second one, you don't necessarily update the size of your window again, so you don't reduce that to show only one panel. So you would get a large window with only one panel shown at the top and nothing beneath it. So yes, it's better to hide everything first and just unhide a single one after that, which is what we're doing here. Okay, I don't think I really need to go into so much detail, because otherwise it's going to be a terribly long video. So let's try to move a bit faster on that. What I did next was to introduce this style sheet, an application level style sheet. The idea then is you would load this style sheet at start of your application and assign that directly to your Qt app. So this is what I'm doing in the main file here. I first create the app, so Q application app, and at some point I'm going to try to load this style CSS file, and I just read the content of this file as a string, and you assign that as a style sheet for your complete app. So it means that then you can define the style for all your additional widget and components in a single CSS file. So this is what I'm doing here. For instance, you have this main button style, and we are already using this main button for the buttons that we have on this first row. So for instance, the year, when you do set object name, you are actually kind of adding a CSS ID to this class, so it will use a style defined for a main button. And this is also the same style that we use for server. And what we have defined also here is the behavior when you're hovering on such a button. So you're going to change the background color to light blue. But if you want, you could just very simply, let's just confirm that everything is built here. Okay, and so we can just run the application, the desktop version of it at least, with this. And you see that when I'm hovering on those buttons, I get this kind of light blue color. This is also another one with the main button style. And you can just go here, and you don't need to recombine anything. You just change that to, say, red. And I start again the application. Now, poof, you get this red color when hovering on the button. This one is not changing because I am... what am I doing with this one? I'm changing its style programmatically, I believe. Where is this done? I'm wondering. Yeah, I think it's in the action that I mentioned before. Activate server panel. Yes, since you are overriding the style here, this will take priority compared to your other style sheet, which was defined in the main style file, I guess. Otherwise, there would be no explanation for it. Yeah, that's it, definitely. Anyway, as I said, then I could start adding more style in there, and this is very handy when you are developing your application, because then you can quickly test different settings for your border color, border radius, things like that. And at the end of this step, this was the kind of design that I could get for the application. So it's technically containing the same thing as what we see here, because what we have here is also what I was calling a server panel initially. So we have one server panel per server, and I was displaying those three separated sections, if you want. So first, the sensors, just reporting sensor values, which are all temperature only for now. That's the only kind of sensor that I have for the moment. Then the states was for output pins in the Raspberry Pi. Those pins are used to control electrical relays that will activate or deactivate some device. So this is an outgoing pin. And you also add input pins, and this was connected to what I call the actions here. So input pins would be, for instance, a button that you could press, a physical button that you could, well, wire to the Raspberry, and then you could press that button to trigger a given action. So 3 different sections here, and we still have those 3 different sections here, except that I made that a bit less visible. What we have first here are the actions. So basically what the user can trigger by pressing a button on the Raspberry. What did I say? Raspberry. Yeah, I don't know. And in fact, I also have virtual actions in there, but let's not mention that. Then I continue with the sensors themselves. And then we have what was called the state, so the outgoing pins. So indicating what is currently activated and what is not activated. Okay, so at that point, I had to investigate another significant issue on my phone specifically. So when I was trying to use the application on Android, it's an Android phone, every time I would try to touch the screen, just to switch the server tab, for instance here, this would display the virtual keyboard, so the Android virtual keyboard. And that's basically making the application unusable. But there was actually a bug already filled for that. So I had to look at this page. And what we need in the hand is, yes, to modify this canvas in the HTML file. And I think the key element was to add this input done. So this is what I did also. So if we go and we check the corresponding HTML file, so it's the web app, that's only for the WebAssembly version, of course. So if I go there, HomeView, HTML, this you see is the main canvas used by Qt to do the complete rendering with WebGL2. Yes, it's a version 2 because I have configured Nscripten to ensure that version 2 is used. And at first, I think there was no such thing. All this was not provided. So I tried providing them one by one, I believe, or maybe not one by one, I don't know. But at first, I didn't have this one, and it was not really working. But as soon as you had that, it's working just fine. So that's cool. As a side note, I have also modified another function, which is in the queue loader here. You see, there's this create function where you have also another canvas created somehow, and you probably want to set input mode to none also here, except that if you search where this function is used, it's only used when you have a container elements object on your config, and this is used to create a canvas, a list of canvas elements. But in the way I'm currently using this setup, when it's time to create a config, I think it's here. Yeah, this is a config, and I'm already providing this canvas element. So technically, I don't think I'm calling the create canvas function here. So I should not be calling that at all. Anyway, this was what I needed to fix this strange issue with the virtual keyboard. Then what did I do? I work on the support for the toast display. Because if you build an application with Qt, basically every time you had a widget inside another widget, you will want to use a layout to position this widget among the other sibling widgets, which makes sense. But for the toast message, what I wanted to do, in fact, was to have my main panel here with all those widgets set up properly, and I wanted to just be able to pop up another widget on top of this. And to do that, what you can do in fact is to add a widget to a given parent where you may have some existing content, but you then don't connect this widget to a given layout. So you will then take responsibility for positioning and resizing this widget yourself. And when you do that, you could very well put the widget on top of existing content, like what I mentioned. And this is what I did. So in my code, I think this is directly in the main window. So main window, we have this show toast, and we have toast widget here, and this is created. So first we have this main panel created and assigned as a central widget, but on top of that, then I'm going to create this toast as a simple widget again, but I'm not using any kind of layout to set this up. And what do I do here? This is a timer to try to, not to try, but to hide the widget after some given time, because basically you want to pop this up and you wait 2 seconds and then you hide the widget again. And then with the function show toast, where is this? No, not here. Can you go there? Yes. When this one is called, you have different modes, and I'm using this mode actually to decide what kind of icon I'm going to show and what kind of colors I'm going to use actually just for the border of the toast widget. So it could be, for instance, green if everything goes right and you have a arc message, or orange if it's a warning, or gray if there's something in progress. So it's waiting for a reply for your request, for instance. And yes, this was working great. So a good mechanism, I guess, to place a widget on top of another. What do we do? That's how you set the position of the widget itself, then set the message, and then show that widget, also ensuring that I would start some kind of timer to hide that widget again later if when I'm done displaying it for a few seconds, basically. Okay. What else should I mention in this one? Yeah, I think I have an example here of a widget of the toast message showing up, except that at that point it was not showing the icon properly because I was not importing that, I guess, in the web application. This is something, it's not really related to the topic itself, but still I think it could be interesting to mention it. When you build your application with Inscription is going to prepare for you a virtual file system when you execute your WebAssembly application on the client side. And you have the possibility when you build your application with Inscription to specify a list of files that are found on the computer where you're doing the build, and which should also be made available to your application at runtime, so on the client side. And the way this is done is going to take all those files, pack them into a data file, and then it's going to have this data file downloaded on the client side, and this data file content would then be used to populate your virtual file system on the client side. then it means that you can just keep using your regular function in C++ like read file, and those files will be found, which is absolutely great. You can actually proceed differently because this virtual file system is something that you can keep manipulating them. Then you could manually add your file in there, at least as far as I understand, or you could cache existing content and populate the file system with this existing content. Also, you have different kind of virtual file system because by default it's going to create what is called a memfs, so memory file system. So it's only available while you are running your web application, so while you are on the web page, and just if you close this web page, everything is discarded. But you could also cache some data into an index database, IndexedDB file system, or you have other file system in case you're running with nodes and so on. Anyways, this was a small deviation from the main focus and main topic here. What was I talking about before that? Good question. Yeah, I was missing the file here. And another thing that I need to mention is I also investigated how to play GIF animation at this point, because it's not shown here, but I think I have that shown under. Yes, so you have it here. You have this GIF animation while I'm waiting for a reply to the request to arrive back on the phone. And sometime this may never happen. You may not get any reply because you could have a very bad internet connection where you are or something like that. So it's nice to have this animation indicating that yes, I took your request into consideration. Now give me some time, I'm trying to process that. And to do that, in the Qt you use the QMovie class. So where do I have that? It's on the main window again. If I search for QMovie, no, it's not going to be found like that because I have a dedicated function for this now. Yeah, create GIF movie. So this would create a QMovie, starting with a GIF file. One thing to note here is that QMovie is a bit different from QPixMap or QIcon because you can't really keep that on the stack and use a copy construction. It doesn't seem to be working, so you rather need to put that on the heap memory, and that's why I'm using a unique pointer here to keep track of this memory to avoid any memory leak. Okay, so when you use this kind of element, you can actually assign that to a Q label. So that's a Q label here. In a similar way to what you would do with a PixMap. This is the same Q label. And when you have that assigned, then you just call start on your QMovie to play the GIF animation in the loop. And that's basically all you need. No, not quite all exactly what you need. You need something else, because to be able to load those GIF animations, you also need to have a plugin in your application. So if I go in the desktop version of HomeView here, I have this plugins, image format, and I'm adding this QGIF DLL file, which is coming from the build version of Qt. So I have that in my Nerve Pro here, libraries, window, MSVC or whatever, Qt6, and then you have here the plugins, and you have the image formats, and you have a bunch of different plugins here for different formats. And yeah, currently I'm basically only using GIF and PNG, but PNG is integrated as a static library, I guess, somehow. So you don't need a plugin for PNG. This is it for the desktop version. When you're building Qt, you need to copy this plugin in your installation folder. I mean, you need to. You just need to know that this plugin is going to be needed. But if you use QMake or the QCreator stuff, I really don't know. It's probably the case that all this setup is done automatically for you. But I'm not using any of this. I'm building everything manually. So we'll just CMake, and I'm providing everything I need step by step on my own. So I had to copy this file. And yeah, if you have to do that for the desktop version, you also need some kind of similar step for the WebAssembly version. And in fact, for the WebAssembly, it's slightly more complex because you need to provide, let's see, in the construction here. So for WebAssembly, this QGIF file, which is a static library in this case for unscripted, it's all those libraries are static. And so it means you need the path for the static library, which is provided here. So with this path, when I'm building with unscripted, I'm going to go in this folder, Qt6, and then I'm going to go into plugins, image format, and I will find this library. So that's the first step you need for unscripted. Then, in some cases, you may also need some of those individual objects. I know it's a case, for instance, for the WASM integration plugin. So this QWASM here, I had to provide this file, which is a pretty weird way to do things if you think about it. Normally, you would encapsulate all your object files into a library, so a .a file. But some of those objects, I don't really know why, in the case of unscripted build, they're not encapsulated in a library. So Qt is actually making them available. So object release is something that is going to be installed. So you have one, for instance, here, but if you just go into the library folder directly, you have, along with those library files, those object release, and a bunch of different categories, or I don't know. And if you go there, you will find, poof, one object. And the fact that it's in the .rcc folder would make me think that normally this object would be part of a resource package. I don't know, but they are not all in a RCC folder, so who knows. Anyway, this is a special thing that you need to handle again in the case where you would be crazy enough to try to build your Qt application without QMake or QCreator or QML, quick, blah blah blah. So probably only me. Never mind. And what else did I need? For the GIF support, basically all we need so far is this library, but you also need to enable this plugin because it's going to be statically linked into your WASM file. So you need to activate that. So with this command here. And yes, with those two additional elements, I could successfully load my GIF also in the web application version. Well, what else? Yes, I wanted to mention this website here, which is where I have retrieved this loader GIF animation, because yeah, it's a very cool website, and I I think I'm going to use it more if I need more GIFs. You have a bunch of different free icons, free GIF here. This is the one I've been using, for instance. And when you click on one of them, you can enable transparent background. I think this is what I did myself. And you can then start changing the colors you would like to use, for instance, for your GIF, and you just click generate to change the color. You can change the animation speed if you want, make it faster. You can change the size of it. I was using 32 pixels myself, for instance. Generate again, blah blah blah, and you have a lot of different additional options and settings like that. So you could configure that to fit your needs more precisely, and then you can just download the resulting GIF image here, GIF animation. So yeah, all those GIFs here, they are customizable. So that's cool. Okay, what else? An interesting, 36 already. An interesting thing I have just learned actually concerning Qt is you can do that in C++. Qt single shot, and you specify how long you want to wait in milliseconds, and you provide a lambda that you want to execute later. So you're just posting a delayed callback. And at first I didn't know that I could do it this way, so I was rather creating a timer manually every time I needed to post even a single delayed callback. And in fact, this is still what I was doing for the toast message. So that's why we have this toast timer here. And then I'm going to set up the toast timer on initialization of the main window. I'm going to keep this as a unique pointer and assign a callback. So when you get this callback executed, it's going to hide your toast and re-enable the server panels themselves. And then I would use this toast timer to mark it as a single shot, set the interval, and start it every time I need to. But all of this, you could just replace that with a simple Q timer single shot call. So that's something good, and I'm probably going to use it this way now. And what else did I change? I also added a nice feature here, which is to prevent you from clicking on another button while you have this toast message displayed, because if you already have the toast message, it means you are either processing a request already, or you're just showing the result of the request, either okay or there's a failure, and you don't want the user to click too quickly on the other underlying buttons to kind of trigger multiple actions at the same time. So this is now prevented with a simple check like this one. Nothing really serious to mention about that. Then yes, I was working a little bit on the interface itself here, because at first I was showing all the elements like here, but many of those elements are actually things that I could consider like not really useful most of the time. So what I really want to use most of the time is the button to open the entrance gate, and everything else here is really to kind of debug the solar heating system that we have if I need to manually enable the pump or something like that. But this kind of never happen most of the time, so because we have an automatic system to enable and disable everything, so most of the time you don't need that. And to update this, I have updated actually the server side of the system, so to be able to indicate that some pins or some sensors could be considered as advanced. So let me show you the config file. So here is a config file, for instance, for the home control part, and you see that I have defined a few different inputs, and so you have the activate gate button, and the others here are marked as advanced now. So this information is retrieved from the config file on the server side, but then the server will be requested to provide its state. And when this state is generated, this information is also included for the pins where this is applicable. So in the HomeView application side, when I receive the state as a JSON data, I will then be able to tell, okay, this pin is considered to be advanced and this one is not. So from that, you can then decide at start, all the pins that are marked as advanced, you are going to add them into a list of widgets. So this is what I do in the server panel, I believe. Yeah, because then I have this toggle advanced widget, and that's a list I mentioned, advanced widgets. So yeah, if it's advanced, you had that, and you hide that by default. And then I have provided this small additional button here, which allow me to toggle between hiding and unhiding the advanced controls. So when I click that, I get the full list of controls, and otherwise I get the reduced list. So most of the time you just start with the reduced list, and that's all you need. So when you have the reduced list here, you have just no action, and otherwise you get the two buttons. And yeah, that's it. So more states here that are not really relevant most of the time. And yeah, what else should we mention? Oh yeah, I also took this as an opportunity to add the previous value reported as part of the state that I'm retrieving from the server side. And with this previous value, what I can do for a sensor is I get the current value and the previous value each time I request the current state. So I can compare those two values, and if the current value is higher than the previous value, then I'm going to display a green color here indicating that temperature is increasing. And otherwise, if the current value is less than the previous value, you get this red color indicating that the temperature is decreasing, obviously. What else? I guess this is it. Yeah, no, that's not the correct title. What I wanted to mention here is, yes, I have also found that I can simply change the fav icon of a given sub-application by adding this icon in the folder where I have this application. At least with a Nginx server, it's working just fine, and nothing more to add on that part, I guess. And I need to change this title. It's the same thing as above. All right, 43 minutes. Sorry about that. Way too long, I know. I have a hard time making things shorter. I need to work on that. But if you made it this far, yeah, thank you for watching. I hope you learned a few things, and yeah, happy coding, and see you next time, hopefully. Bye bye.